Mother Knows Death, starring Nicole and Jemmy and Maria QK.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mother Knows Death. On today's episode, we are going to talk about some DNA evidence relating to some of the most high-profile murder cases, people seriously injured or killed by animals on vacation, another plane crash, believe it or not, another sounding injury, believe it or not, and more. So let's get started with the celebrity news of today.
All right, so first we have this story about this model from New York. So back in 2020, her name's Leah. She was working with the hair care company Conair for a convention. So she claimed at the convention that one of the stylists negligently applied this bleaching product to her hair, didn't remove it in time, and it left her disfigured.
Yeah, unfortunately, this happens from time to time. I've had a couple of my followers actually send me cases of them getting burned when they were getting their hair bleached. And one of the biggest things that should stick out to a stylist if this is happening is that when you get your hair bleached, it's not supposed to hurt. So if one of your clients is, or you're doing it on yourself and you're complaining that it hurts really bad and it's causing redness, you should immediately wash the bleach off and start rinsing it a lot, like for 20 minutes straight. And that will cause the chemical to wipe off of the skin and cause, it doesn't mean that you're not going to get any damage, but you definitely can reduce the risk of getting a serious burn, like in this case. Now, I don't know exactly what happened in this case, but I'm going to tell you what happened in a similar case to one that one of my followers had sent me over 5 years ago at this point. And the title of that post in the gross room for those of you listening is called Butthead, and you'll know what the reason for that is. So the woman had went to the salon to get her hair bleached, to get her entire head lightened, and the stylist had accidentally grabbed a bleach that is typically not used directly on the scalp. This is one that you would see when a stylist is using foils to put highlights in someone's hair. They'll use a stronger bleach. And what happened was that this particular stylist used the one that was for off of the scalp, on the scalp, and it caused this girl to have severe burns on her head. And she didn't really, the stylist just told her, okay, this is kind of normal to have burning, which they say it's not supposed to be, but every time I've had bleach put on my head, it's burned too.
Yeah, I was just gonna say every time, because we dyed our hair.
We've experimented, yes,
a fair amount of time. So definitely every time we've done it before, it has burned a little bit. But I guess not to this capacity. Clearly,
no. So the woman that I wrote about in this post called Butthead, she was saying her head hurt so bad, and she finally said, "Mom, can you look at the back of my head?" And her mom was horrified at what she saw. And when you see the photographs that go along with this case, you will 100% realize why her mom freaked out and was like, we need to go to the emergency room right now and get this taken care of. So the woman actually got referred to a plastic surgeon, and she had to get skin grafts because she had such a severe chemical burn. Oh, another part I left out of the story was that when this woman put this off the scalp bleach on her hair by accident, she also put her under the dryer to help accelerate it.
Oh my God.
And it was a combination of a chemical burn and a thermal burn as well. So she had to get a full thickness skin graft, which is outrageous, on her head. So they had to take skin from her butt and put it on her head because it was such a large piece of skin that had to be removed. That's why I labeled the post Butthead, in case you were wondering.
So in this case, when you're explaining this, I'm just thinking about situations you or I have been in where you're getting your head bleached and it has that slight burning. But then when you see photos of what happened to this woman, it's absolutely atrocious. She's completely, as the article put it, bloody and mangled. It's really graphic pictures. She said her hair can't grow back in that spot.
Well,
and
you could see that. It's a permanent scar.
Yeah.
It's terrible looking.
So I guess she said she has this heart-shaped bald spot, so I'm wondering if they were trying to do some like heart-shaped bleach design in her hair that just went horribly wrong. It's absolutely horrible, but she first filed a complaint in 2022, but they pushed back immediately saying she was in breach of contract because I guess when you sign up to do these type of events with them, in your agreement, you say that they're not responsible for any injuries you might get in the process.
I could see if she had an allergy to a hair product, I could see them not wanting to take responsibility for that, but if they could figure out that the wrong product was used or for the wrong amount of time, or for example, they put her under the heater when they weren't supposed to, like in the case that I was just talking about, then there's definitely negligence.
Yeah,
Don't you agree?
No, I definitely think so, and I think the court probably agrees too, because if it was as simple as breach of contract, I don't think this would be getting pushed very far, but now it's going to be going to trial unless they settle beforehand. So she's
interesting. Permanently deformed. Listen, when you're a regular person like you or I, and we go to the store and buy it, we don't really understand the full extent of it. She was a model, right?
Yeah.
She went as a model to go get her hair done. I actually did this once. There was this Hair World thing back in the 90s that I went to, and they dyed my hair and cut my hair at.
I think I have pictures of you. I
certainly didn't expect that I was going to get third-degree chemical burns on my head. Like, that's just not even what people are thinking when they're getting their hair done. So, I don't know. But, I mean, if she signed a contract, then I don't know if she would be responsible for it or not. It's just, it's scary because we do go to salons all the time and they use some hardcore chemicals on us. I mean, the bleach that they use actually opens up your hair shaft, right? And it allows hydrogen peroxide to react with the melanin in your hair tone, so it doesn't look as dark as it normally is. Now, you have to think, like, if someone like you or I walks in there, and this woman she's Asian, right? So she has darker natural hair. It just takes a lot longer, and the product needs to be on a lot longer in order to lighten the hair. That's just the way it is. And that is if she has virgin hair, because especially a person that colors their hair and then tries to bleach it, it takes even a stronger product and a longer time to get that color out sometimes. So I'm not sure where this is going to go, but I definitely think a lawsuit is in order in this case.
I would assume the court agrees with her, because I can't see a world in which you could just sign a piece of paper that waives somebody of all possible liability when it comes down to using chemical products like this. It just doesn't even seem realistic that that's a thing that they could uphold. So definitely they're letting it go through, and I'm interested to see if they're going to just settle so they don't have to go through the whole trial, or if she's going to do it, because I feel like the jury's definitely going to be on her side.
You know what's crazy? The woman that I was talking about in the post labeled Butthead that I did a few years back, she actually didn't sue the salon because apparently the woman that was doing her hair, she said she was a single mom and she didn't make that much money and she just didn't want to do that to her, which I thought was kind of cool. But yeah, when you're in a situation, I mean, and this girl had to have skin grafts, for Christ's sakes, like, when you're in a situation like this where you're being used as a model and some huge company is responsible, I don't know. It's kind of tacky that they're even fighting it when you look at the pictures of this poor girl's head.
Well, yeah, and I think that's why she keeps pushing forward too, because, like, you know, you want to tell them what happened, and then most of these companies are just total dicks about it, and you're like, you know what, I am going to take the time to fully go after you.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Just at least, like, send me some money for all my hospital bills, but I mean,
like, don't use this product again because there's clearly a problem, or like do more research into who you're hiring to do the process.
I don't know. It is scary, but I think about, especially, it's not even from a woman's perspective, because men might actually be more crazy about their hair than women are, honestly. Like, I'm starting to think that just the more and more dudes that I talk to. But for you have to get some kind of extension. I don't even know how you cover a spot like that on your head. I know they have all these different kinds of hair products and partial falls and all these sorts of things that they could put on to cover. But it's going to be a hassle for the rest of this woman's life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Freak accidents.
Guys, another plane crash. Like, I'm sorry, but this just can't be all happening in the last couple of weeks. It's very bizarre. And I know we were talking to Lauren last night about how there's always aviation accidents, and they're definitely heightened right now with the media reporting them. But this isn't, I talked a little bit last week about how, like, 2 planes clipped wings. I think that happens pretty often, actually. But these type of things, with the commercial airliner and the helicopter situation, the accident in Philly, and now in Toronto, this Delta flight with 80 people was trying to land on the runway. I don't know what happened, but it seems like their landing gear wasn't coming down, which caused them to land on the belly of the plane, and then it flipped over completely and caught on fire.
Did you see that video I sent you on Instagram today?
Of the people getting out of it?
Yes.
Yes.
It's terrifying. It really is. I don't know what to say. I think that you might be able to pinpoint it to a certain thing if it was all happening because of the same reason. I just think it's some weird coincidental thing because with the first one in DC, that seems to have been now at least preliminarily they're saying that is that even a word? Preliminary reports are saying that that it had something to do with possibly the radio of the helicopter was broken and they weren't getting the message that they should have been getting. So okay, so that's an aircraft error, right? And so that's that one. And then the one that happened in Philly, of course, the one that happened near us. Did we even find out what happened with that one? Not yet, right?
I don't
No.
think we found out.
But
what
I mean,
happened yet.
that one, you have to assume it has something to do with the airplane since it happened right after it took off. I mean, unless I don't understand what else could have happened. You know what? That's stupid to say because the pilot could have had a heart attack. I guess I don't really know what would have happened in that case.
Well, you just don't know, and
but you
know,
can't pinpoint it to. It's not like okay, there was a problem with air traffic controllers in all 4 cases. There's clearly an issue here. This one, I'm sorry, this Toronto one. When I looked at the original video of the plane upside down and them having people exit the plane, I'm looking at the runway and I'm just like, I wouldn't even want to drive on that street. I don't know what the rules are with airplanes, but when it's a sheet of ice on the runway, I feel like that's probably not a good idea.
Yeah, the runway's like completely covered in snow when this video comes out, and they are saying that the runway was dry at the time the plane landed and it was actively snowing when this happened. But I agree with you. It's certainly not a road you would want to even drive a car on, let alone
There's
land a
no
plane.
way it was dry. It looks like it's got 2 inches of snow on it. It looks like that snow that like sticks over top of the ice kind of thing. I don't know. Just that was my first impression thinking, God, they just landed a plane in this weather. It's all gray outside and hazy and but I guess I don't know, in Canada and stuff where it's like that all the time, maybe they do that. But I mean, and that one technically isn't even on American territory, correct? I mean, that would be responsibility of Canada at this point. So I think it's just a coincidental thing maybe. I don't know.
Well,
It's not my level of expertise. I just know that the worst part of the whole thing, honestly, is that as of this recording, that I went to the AP and it said that 80 people on board survived and there was minor injuries, those who got injured. And then I read that there were 19 people injured and 3 were in critical condition, which I wouldn't consider that to be minor. So I'm not really sure what the injuries are, but everybody's reporting something different.
Well, I'm going to go with a couple people have critical injuries because I've heard that on multiple legitimate news outlets. So I would say that's more likely what happened. And I don't see how some people would not. I mean, you want to say most people were buckled in, so they were protected in some capacity by that. But you always know somebody on a plane that tries to hide that they're not buckled. And then when things like this happen, you go flying around because you're not in your seatbelt like you should be. That is on for a reason.
That's totally possible because there's been many times recently when I'm flying because I feel like people try to get these new tricks so they could get ahead. And it's like as soon as the plane's landing, they're like up and ready to go so they could just jump ahead of everyone once they start getting up and everything. But I don't know. I'd be scared to get yelled at by one of the plane's flight attendants, you know what I mean? But I don't know. Listen, like that plane being upside down and then think about this, like being in your seatbelt and hung upside down because that's what happened, right? And then you had to unbuckle your seatbelt and somehow get down off of that, especially if you're a family and you were with your kids. I mean, this is why whenever we take a plane, I want us all to be together because last time we got on, it was like me and the kids were together on one side, but then Gabe had to get a seat that was like 3 aisles up because it was the only thing that we could get. And the guy sitting next to us was just so sweet. And he was like, no, your husband could come sit next to you. I'll go up there. That was so cool. But in cases like this, like what if something like that happened and Gabe was all the way away from us? I would be freaking out, you know?
Well, yeah, of course. And I've thought of the couple, there's only been 1 or 2 times where there's been like really bad turbulence or we were landing or something where I was like, I am going to pee myself. Like, I cannot wait another second. And I remember in particular on our flight to Denver last year, in the middle of the flight, I had been trying to go to the bathroom the whole time and I just couldn't do it. And there was really bad turbulence on the plane the entire time. So they were like, you can't get up. And I was like, all right, it's like 2.5 hours into this. I'm going to pee my pants. Like, I have to go right now. And the flight attendant's like, you need to sit down because if you hit your head, we're not responsible.
That's
and
when
I'm
you
like,
pee right on her foot. That's all you do in that situation.
that's what happened when that guy ended up peeing on that other guy, probably because they were just like, sit down. And I'm like, well, do you want me to pee in the seat and like have that be a thing? Or I don't know what to tell you. Like, I have to go. And if I get hurt or something happens, it's my fault. I'll accept that. But
it's really like when you have to pee like that, it sounds so silly, but it's really one of the most satisfying feelings in life when you could sit down and let it out. It's just like this. That's why I told you like natural birth kind of felt like once it was done, it was just like this euphoria comes over you of like, I just got that out. It's the same as that kind of a feeling, but yeah, like them telling you can't go to the bathroom, like it's not like little kids that are just getting up to like go wash their hands and see what the bathroom looks like. You know, most people are.
But then you don't have that typical euphoria because I'm in there and then the plane's shaking so bad and I'm like, oh my God, this thing's gonna plummet to the ground and I'm in this bathroom.
Well, what's the difference where you are at that point?
Because I'd like to be with my husband if something like that happened instead of stuck in the bathroom.
I feel like all of these plane incidents that have happened over the past couple of months, there has to be some people that, especially this one, that they all survived, you know? I just would love to talk to somebody that went through something like this. Remember the flight that was it was probably a year ago at this point when the door flew off during the flight?
I think that's what started kicking off all of this, really, last year. Because around that time, all those Boeing employees were coming forward talking about all the issues they were having. And then at that time, all those Boeing flights were having insane problems, like the door blowing off and people's shirts getting sucked out. And like, what else happened around? I mean, we have plane
I would really
stories.
love to talk to somebody that, because so all of us fly at some point, most of us except my dad, right? I think that everyone could relate to a little bit of fear of just being in that kind of a situation where you really have absolutely no control and just thinking about people, how you feel afterwards after going through something that traumatic. And also you would feel kind of lucky because I think in general, when planes crash, most people die. So just surviving something like that is awesome. You should feel blessed in one sense, but on the other sense, like I wonder if these people actually ever want to go on a plane again.
Well, I think Travis Barker survived a plane crash.
Oh yeah, was he on like was it a helicopter? Or it was a plane?
I think it was like a small private plane, but he survived it. I don't really know the details of the rest of it.
I forgot about that. No, that happened.
He wouldn't get on a plane for a long time, and now he's married to a Kardashian who constantly needs to be going to Europe, and then he has now gone on a plane since. So I thought, because you can't like really take a boat overseas like that
why
anymore.
did she have to be constantly going to Europe? Like, couldn't she just stay at home and just
They got married in Italy.
Whatever. All right. Let's talk about, so these next two cases have to do with animal attacks on vacation, which is also terrifying.
Yeah, this 55-year-old woman and her husband were on vacation in Turks and Caicos. So around 10:30 in the morning one day, they're just swimming at the beach. They said they were only a few yards into the water, and I guess the shark comes upon them. And so this woman, instead of, typically when you would think you would see a shark, you would be like, oh shit, and like try to get away as fast as possible. But instead, she was trying to engage with it to take photos of it. Of course, it's a shark, so how do you think that went? It bit her hands off.
So I read a couple different articles about this because I was just trying to get information to see if they knew what kind of a shark it was. And there are some witnesses there that are saying that that photo story isn't true. So,
Interesting.
I mean, I know they sell cameras that you could bring into the water, but
A lot of iPhones you could put underwater today too.
like a regular one that doesn't have a special case or anything.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you
Really?
can.
Well,
The newer one.
I didn't know that.
I'm pretty sure.
Anyway, she was in, so one, I found a little bit more details. She was in hip deep water, which everybody could agree with. And Turks and Caicos is like that really clear, beautiful water. And apparently the shark bumped up against her. The witnesses believe that it was a bull shark, so like a 7-foot shark, a huge shark, and it bit her thigh. And then it circled back around and she put her hands out to have the shark, to try to push the shark away, and it bit both of her hands off.
Well, that's a way different story than what other media outlets are putting
No, I know.
out there.
So I don't know, but regardless, the shark bit one of her hands at the wrist and one at the forearm. So she has no hands now at all.
Do you think the resort put out that story so people weren't scared to go on the beach? Because that's pretty much the reason you're going there, because they have the most beautiful beaches.
Put out what story?
That she was
That she
intentionally
provoked it?
engaging with it, and that's
Yeah.
why it attacked her, so it didn't look bad on the resort. Even though it's an accident. Well, is it an accident you're in the shark's home?
No, it's not. Well, we're going to talk about the same exact thing in the next story, but it's just whenever you go, it's like you hear people are going in the ocean and they're doing this and they're doing that. They went diving. I remember there was one woman that was like diving off a boat years ago and there was a shark attack. And you think, if you're in the middle of the ocean and you're jumping into the water, like, why wouldn't you just expect there to be a shark there? They're not going to attack humans, but maybe there was you know what I mean? They're an animal. They're just being animals. They're not trying to hurt people. And maybe it was provoked. I mean, you're saying it was provoked. How would the shark know if you were trying to take a picture of it? And would it get mad and say, like, I'm going to bite that camera out of your hand? Like, they have a small brain. They don't think like that.
Well, I guess this is my problem with these animal attack stories we talk about so often, is that, like, it's not that it's not unfortunate that this happened, and it can be considered an accident, but I don't like when people are treating the shark or the bear, or in the next case a hippo, like they're a serial killer that was like plotting this plan to kill this person. Like, you're in their home, they're an animal, they don't have the brains that work the same way as us, they're just being an animal in their environment.
I didn't hear anything about it in this case, because normally we hear that they're using all of this money and resources to try to find this beast that did this to this woman. It's so ridiculous.
Well, they
just
did close the beach for 2 days, so was that the plan? They were going to try to look for it and kill it, which that's not fair to the shark.
It's just the dumbest shit ever. Like, you're going to close the beach. Like, that doesn't help. The thing's still in the ocean that's attached there. It doesn't. I mean, I guess they were hoping it would swim away or something. I don't know, but there's plenty of millions of other ones to come back and take its place. That all to me is just like a smoke and mirror type of thing that the resort's doing to act like they're doing something, because they just can't do anything about it. And you're not at a zoo. There's no control over what's in the environment,
But let's argue you were at a zoo. The animals are in captivity, not in their natural environment, which might make them act out of their normal behavior. So, like, it's still, I'm saying it's not correct, but what do you expect? They are not humans with human-like brains.
Yeah, but
what do you want from them?
I get that.
Like, leave them in their environment.
But I'm just saying, like, at a zoo, you assume that you're in a controlled environment. I guess the beach, just because you're at some fancy resort, it's not a controlled environment, this just whatever. Okay,
well,
talk about the next story, because this is the same exact thing in another country.
It's the same exact thing. So last year, this couple in their 70s had booked a vacation for a 10-day safari in Zambia, which honestly sounds incredible.
Yeah, it does, but like, before you would go, like, let's say you and I were going on a 10-day safari, right?
Yeah.
What like, what would you do ahead of time? Would you find out what animals were going to be there? Would you learn about the environment you were going in? Or would you just go and listen to every single thing the tour guide said and just like go there completely ignorant?
Well, I do my own research, so I would say I would look things up, but I also see how easily they could have been in this situation. So, a couple days into the trip, they're on this, what they're calling a bushwalk, which is to observe hippos, notoriously one of the most dangerous animals in the world, in a riverbank. So, you're going on this walk to watch hippos in their natural environment. And they're saying these tour guides are with them, and one of them has a rifle. Like, I'm sorry, but in my opinion, I don't think a simple rifle is taking out a hippo, right? But whatever.
I don't know. Why would you even go on a bushwalk? I mean, listen, I think it would
Because
be
the
totally
tourist
cool.
company is acting like they do it all the time, and there's never, like, they're selling.
No, this is 100% on the people. This is the same as this woman that just got her hands bit off by the shark suing the hotel that the beach was at. Come on.
No, you can't. You definitely can't do that. Both parties are responsible for this because of trying to sell it as a safe activity, and also in your own mind not identifying it as an unsafe activity.
I don't know. I don't agree. Both parties are.
Okay. Anyway,
Remember a couple years back they used to have tours of that volcano.
Yeah.
That all those people went to and the volcano erupted and they all got burned really bad and stuff.
Yes.
How is that the tour company's fault?
Because they're selling it as a safe activity.
But you're going to a volcano that's active.
Yeah, but people don't understand how that works. So I'm saying, like, the company should not be selling it as a safe activity, and the person booking the tour should also be doing independent research and see what the risks are.
This statement from the guy that went on the safari said, quote, had we...
Wait, hold on. We didn't even say what happened yet.
Okay, say what happened first.
They're on this bush... You do this all the time. They're on this bushwalk.
Because I'm angry.
They're on this bushwalk, and this married couple is walking through observing the hippos, and they claim that the tour guides left them alone and that the hippo made eye contact with the wife and started charging at her, and then it completely mauled her and ripped her apart in front of everybody else.
Well, it crushed her head. Did you ever see them feed pumpkins to the hippos at the zoo?
Yeah, I've seen that. It's insane.
Well, imagine someone's human head being in between those jaws. It's funny because hippos are dangerous. So cute.
Yes, but it's not a surprise that they're dangerous. Like, this has been a known fact for a long time. So if somebody's like, do you want to go walk amongst hippos? I'd be inclined to say, no, I would not like to walk amongst hippos because they are violent.
Okay, so this is what this guy's saying. Like, quote, had we understood the dangers posed by the hippopotamus, we would have never agreed to be in such close contact. Like, that just sounds dumb to me. You're trying to get money. I mean, listen, the situation is freaking horrible, but like, saying that out loud just makes you sound dumb.
But do you think that the company was, I'm just trying to think of everything. Do you think the company did not let them know they'd be walking amongst animals and they just thought they were going to be like walking in a designated area that did not have wildlife?
You're outside in Africa.
I'm just,
like, what are you talking about?
Listen, I just think that...
And it said it was a bushwalk to have them walk to see animals in their natural habitat. Like,
I know. I'm trying to understand from both perspectives. Like, when I am going to go book a trip somewhere and there's all these activities listed, like, it is my responsibility to research those things. But I also think there's a world in which that company should not just be able to say it's 100% safe.
I'm not sure that was anywhere. They probably signed a bunch of waivers and shit too, honestly. And whatever, like, listen, when you go on vacation like this and do something like this, you don't expect anything like this to happen. And it's terrible that her husband had to sit there and witness that. But when you're on a tour guide with a person that's carrying around a weapon that's not for people to protect you, you have to assume that there's something that's could hurt you really bad. That's why this person's carrying a rifle around. And also, it's kind of fucked up to go watch hippos in their environment so a bunch of people could go look at it, and then if it starts attacking someone, to kill it.
That's what I was talking about earlier.
It's just like it's kind of messed up. Like this whole thing is just kind of dumb.
You're in the hippo's home. It doesn't even know that you're a person. It just sees that you're food. So why does it have to die for just going about its normal business?
I don't know. I'm not even this like animal rights person.
I don't like animals at all, if I'm being honest.
I don't really like them either. Like, I like my cat. I'm not a huge animal person, but I just also think that it's just kind of dumb.
But what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. You should not kill the animal when you're in their home and they go after you because they don't have a human brain to identify there's a difference. Stop comparing them to like Jeffrey Dahmer. They are not the same thing. It is ridiculous. This episode is brought to you by The Gross Room.
Guys, we have a lot of great things going on in the Gross Room this week. One example that makes the Gross Room a little bit better than just following my Instagram account is, for example, this week's mystery diagnosis was a young woman who was poisoned by her 60-year-old boyfriend. And I couldn't really get into the details of the case on Instagram because they censor the shit out of me, honestly. So I was able to write a lot more details in the Gross Room, along with show a little bit more graphic pictures that I wouldn't normally be able to share on Instagram. Plus, we have awesome posts like the butthead one I was talking about earlier with the girl that had to get skin grafts because she had such severe chemical burns from having her hair bleached. And this week we did our high profile / celebrity death dissection, all about the different cases we've covered over the years involving presidents and politics and politicians. So that's really interesting. And one thing that I thought was really cool about that case is that all of the people that I listed that we've covered that have died, that have been related to their death was somehow surrounded around a politician, they all involved the Kennedy family, which
I did notice that.
Which is so interesting. But the George Washington one's really cool, and we talk about how bloodletting possibly led to his death. So we're going to talk a little bit about bloodletting actually in the next story. But yeah, the Gross Room's awesome, so check it out.
Yeah, head over to thegrossroom.com for more info and to sign up.
Okay, let's get into true crime in this bloodletting situation.
All right, we have 2 DNA stories for you guys, which is extremely exciting for me. So first, we're going to talk about Jack the Ripper. He is one of the oldest and most famous serial killers that we talk about in our time. So in 1888, this unidentified man had gone around London and killed 5 women. Newspapers, because they didn't know his identity, referred to him as Jack the Ripper. And for all this time, it's been this great speculation, who was this man? Well, now a researcher in England might have some answers.
So apparently there was this shawl that was found at the time when this one woman, one of his victims, was murdered. And they did have a suspect at the time who was never arrested. I guess they had a couple suspects, but nobody's ever formally been charged with the crimes. And they did this DNA on this shawl, and I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, but he's claiming to say that they were
The researchers
claiming to say that they found DNA from this one particular person that was a suspect at the time. And what was his name? The suspect?
Well, okay, so on the shawl, they did DNA testing, and they said that the blood on the shawl was from the victim of the shawl. And then they said they were semen DNA that belonged to a guy named Aaron Kosminski. Okay, so he was a Polish barber at that time. So they're saying that the semen DNA on the shawl matched him, and he had been a suspect. And this researcher had claimed in a book he wrote 10 years ago he believed this guy, Aaron, was the leading suspect and was Jack the Ripper.
So I think it's personally a stretch to say that he is definitely Jack the Ripper just because this guy's semen was on her shawl. I mean,
why else would you just have semen on your shawl?
Because they might have had a relationship. Like, how would you even know that?
Well, I think there's a couple other factors that he eventually, this guy, he was suspected to be Jack the Ripper. He was never arrested, but then he had schizophrenia and he was put in an asylum. They're also saying that in
Why
other
was he? Do you know why he was initially suspected? I'm just curious, like why they thought of him to be a suspect to begin with.
Well, people that knew him said he had homicidal thoughts and he was just acting acting really crazy around that time. I don't know in particular how they connected him to these women. I'm not super familiar with this case, but I believed the lore at the time was that he was only killing prostitutes, but now they're saying that 3 of the 5 women had no connection to doing any type of sex work. So, like, I think that's interesting because that's the story I've always heard is like, oh, he was always killing these prostitutes. But
Yeah,
so who were they?
So the shawl belonged to a woman named Catherine Eddowes. I guess that's how you pronounce her name. And everything that I read about her didn't seem like she was a prostitute at all. What's interesting about these deaths was that they were killed with a sharp object, obviously, and her particular autopsy showed that her throat was sliced, and that was her cause of death, was the left common carotid. She bled out from that injury. But what was weird is that they did the autopsy slightly after she died. They said that her body was still warm when they did the autopsy, which is, I don't like doing autopsies like that. But she had these really interesting, lots of different trauma to her body, but one of the most significant ones was that her abdomen was sliced open and she was partially eviscerated, meaning that her intestines were taken out of her abdomen, and the pathologist that was doing the autopsy thought that it was strategically placed over her shoulder and across her arm and thought that that was very unusual. And then they said that one of her kidneys was missing, and the pathologist doing the autopsy came to the conclusion that he thought that this person might have had some skill in anatomy because of the way that the kidney was removed so nicely. But there's other people that are also just like, this guy didn't have to be a surgeon. Like, you could just have killed an animal in the woods and knew how to take it out.
But an interesting thing, though, is he was a barber, and at that time, barbers were considered barber surgeons, and they had a little more knowledge of anatomy than they have now. So I think that's why they found it suspicious.
So I don't think that that's right historically. I'm not sure, but there was definitely a thing called barber surgeons back in the day. That's why barbers still have the poles out front that have to do with them doing minor surgical procedures and bloodletting and everything like that. I think the blue represents cutting the veins, the blue veins, and the red represents blood, and the white represents the bandages of the barber pole, right? But that was done like a really, really long time ago. This woman was killed in 1888, which is almost the turn of the century. Like, I think that practice wasn't going on with barber surgeons that late into history. Like, there was a distinct cutoff between surgeons, medical doctor surgeons, and barbers way before that. So I'm not sure that that's historically accurate, that there were barbers that were doing surgical procedures in the late 1800s like that.
Well, regardless,
and like, that guy was a younger guy, so I mean, unless it was a family business or something, I don't know. Like, I don't even know that.
But 23 back then was basically 45. So, like,
no, but
yes,
I'm saying if he was 23 years old, though, it's not like there was someone in his family still practicing the barber surgeon thing that he grew up looking at and stuff. It still was, it looks to me from what I've been looking up and stuff that it was the mid 1700s when that split occurred, that there was like a distinct line between surgeons and medical doctors versus barbers. Now, I'm not saying that they weren't still doing these procedures, but like we were talking about earlier with George Washington, there was one of these barber surgeon people involved with George Washington, but that was back in the late 1700s. And that was just experimental stuff. You know, they used to do bloodletting because they thought that they would be freeing the body of disease and things like that. So, and he was the president, so he got whatever he wanted to get done to him, even though they were advising him against it and all this stuff. But this was almost 1900. I just don't think that was happening. And there is so much debate between physicians saying like, okay, this guy had anatomy and knowledge and not. Like, I mean, honestly, if you have a body in front of you and you cut it open, you could, I don't know why the kidney was chosen over anything else, but anybody could cut it out if you know how to use a knife. You don't need to.
Like in every other case, however, it's a circumstantial piece of evidence that could go against him. I don't know in particular how he was connected to this victim, but you have multiple factors. You have the DNA, you have what he was doing around the time, you have that he was mentally ill. So this researcher is really convinced that this has been the person and had publicized that in 2014 when he wrote a book, and now has this DNA, which he's trying to just basically close the case and be like, this guy is Jack the Ripper. And beyond this short article, there is much other evidence this guy has to suggest this is the person. But for now, this is his scientific confirmation in his mind. But other people are questioning it as well.
Yeah, because this DNA, I'm questioning it for multiple reasons. Like, this DNA evidence hasn't been published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal. This is just this guy's. And, like, honestly, this happens sometimes. If a researcher's trying to make something happen, they can make it happen. But not to say that they're creating DNA. But when I see a picture of this shawl is almost, I'm trying to think of what it would be similar to clothing today. Almost, it's almost like a poncho, like a huge poncho thing that you would wrap around your body. It's the size of a blanket almost, right? And in the picture that the person's holding up this shawl, which, by the way, has been in existence for now 137 years with DNA on it, right? In the picture of the shawl, there's a person holding it, and they're not even wearing gloves. So now their DNA is on it as well.
That's a major problem.
And, nobody's been wearing gloves, though. So think about all of the people that have touched this shawl that have been obsessed and interested with this case over 137 years, not to mention the fact that the DNA can denigrate, and the DNA that was taken from this was mitochondrial DNA and not nuclear DNA, which is it's better to have a more distinct fit of who the person is. So mitochondrial DNA is found in a little organelle inside of your cells, and it makes its own DNA, and that's the DNA of your mom. So if we looked at Maria's mitochondrial DNA, it would be the same as mine, it would be the same as mom's, it would be the same as Nanny's, right? But, like, it's also the same as our cousins, and you know what I mean? Because it goes to your mother's lineage. So there's going to be other people that have that DNA, whereas nuclear DNA has both DNA from both your mom and your dad, and it's just more specific, and that's not the one that they used. So I think that they might be onto something, but it's a little bit of a stretch in a way to say, like, this case is solved for sure, in my opinion anyway.
Well, you don't know the other circumstantial evidence he has, but if you're just going to isolate the DNA component of this story, yes, I agree with you.
And the weirdest part of the story is that it's the 3 times great granddaughter of this victim is calling for a new legal inquest, and she said she, quote, just wants justice to be served. Like,
well, that's
what?
ridiculous.
The person's dead for almost 150 years. Like, what are you talking about right now? Why are we going to waste any money on that? It just seems, it seems, I mean, if researchers independently want to do it just to get an answer, I just think, are we actually going to put a legal inquest in for this? What do you get out of that exactly?
I don't know. All right, new developments with Kohberger. So his lawyers claim blood from an unknown man was found on a handrail in the victim's home, in addition to another's DNA found on a glove outside.
All right, so you're going to have to explain a little bit about this story for people who are living under a rock.
Like, I mean, we've talked about it so many times. Bryan Kohberger is the alleged killer of, which I want to bring up a point later, but let me finish what I'm saying first. Bryan Kohberger is the alleged killer of 4 college students in Idaho. In November of 2022, they were all found stabbed to death, brutally murdered. He was arrested about a month later, right? And then he is currently waiting to go to trial for this crime. So the only thing they had really tying him to this case for physical evidence was they found his DNA on this knife sheath. This is a hard word for me.
It is.
They found his DNA on the button of a knife sheath that was left at the scene. So, of course, that's incredibly suspicious considering all these kids are found stabbed to death. So, there's already been a lot of questions about how they obtained the DNA match because they ran it through a public system, came up with one of his relatives. This is how the Golden State Killer was also caught 50 years after committing all his crimes. But his lawyer has been arguing the whole time that that's a violation of his rights, which I'm curious how that's going to go down in court. But now they're saying there's this additional DNA from other people found at the scene, and they're trying to get the case dismissed or get him off in some capacity on this evidence.
This crime scene must be a nightmare for investigators because it was a college party house. I mean, just think about all of the DNA between people going there, drinking, having sex, just being teenagers, spitting. You could have a cut cuticle on your finger and get blood somewhere. I mean, it's just really a lot of DNA to go through. And just because it's unknown, I don't know how they figure out what's known versus unknown. They must have tested a bunch of people that were known to go to the house. But before those girls lived in that house, there were other people living in that house. I mean, it's just a lot. It's just a lot of stuff. And
because you can't necessarily tell how old something is, right?
What,
like they couldn't.
I have no idea. I don't believe that they're able to figure out how long something's been there. I really don't know much about DNA testing. That's a whole other career profession of people that know the ins and outs of that stuff. It seems to me, if you just think about it, for example, like even in my small little house that's over 100 years old, how much DNA must be in this house? It's just skin cells shedding off and this and that. It's just very hard. Now, I think the biggest piece of evidence that they have, obviously, is because they have this guy that definitely shouldn't have ever been in that house having a knife sheath, which also shouldn't have been in that house, with DNA on it under one of the victims' bodies, right? So that's what led them to other things. And there's other things too that they were able to say something about cell phone pings and where his car was. And here there was, do you remember there was that woman working at the gas station that said she had saw in the news that they were looking for a white, what was that car? A Hyundai, whatever it was. And then she had said she went through the tapes from the gas station and saw one driving by, and they were able to ping the cell phone. And there's all these different things that go along with it. I've been saying from the beginning, though, that there's something else with this case. And do you remember when he got arrested, the very first thing he said was, "Did you arrest anyone else for this?"
Yeah, I do. Which
I
was
always
weird.
thought it was weird, and it's something you can't blow it off. It's something that can't be ignored. It's very, you could say, okay, he's a criminal justice student, so he just said that to purposely throw people off, which is totally possible.
Well,
but
it seems like to me they're trying to use the fact that there's blood DNA from two other males as evidence that his case should get dismissed. But the judge, rightfully so, is like, well, we can't just ignore his DNA that was on the knife sheet. So, no, we're still going forward with it, obviously. Because they'll need to prove, like, I am interested when the trial does happen, supposedly in August of this year, how they're going to bring that up, who it belongs to, was it other guys that were regularly at the party? Bryan Kohberger, like you're saying, had no business being in that house, so his DNA being in there is the biggest red flag.
And I don't know what, I believe they were saying it was touch DNA. Like I don't know the difference, but obviously this is what's going to be a problem. They found one single thing of touch DNA on this knife sheath, but they found nothing in the rest of his house. Nothing. Like, you murder 4 people and you have, even if the guy was wearing a Tyvek suit and somehow was able to take it off and put it in a bag or something, I don't know what exactly the guy did, but there was nothing in the car and nothing in his apartment. Nothing. There wasn't a dog hair in his house from their house. They found nothing else. And that's going to be just having that little bit of DNA does not convict him. You know, like
but
somebody had said, and this is true, if you go to a gun show or a knife show or something, like we go like, let's say we go to our favorite knife store in Tennessee, right? That big knife store. And you go and you're like, oh, let me look at that knife. And you pick it up and you're like, oh, this is cool. Nah, it's too much money. I don't want to buy it. And you give it back. Well, guess what? Your DNA is on that knife right now. So if somebody buys it and uses it as a crime, like my DNA will come up on it and they'll be like,
yes, but they have to piece this together with circumstantial evidence. I mean, it's not like that's the only thing tying him to
like,
this
listen,
crime. Like
that dude's eyes are fucking creepy as hell, and he's guilty based on that. Okay,
wait, this is what I want to bring up. When we talked about Luigi last week, and every time we talk about Luigi, we inevitably get messages and comments being like, you guys are assholes. He is alleged to have killed this man, right? Even though there's a video that looks pretty much like him. But let me just say this. Now we have Bryan Kohberger, who there's really not as much clear as day evidence, such as a video of him shooting somebody or stabbing somebody in this case. And because of the way he looks, because he's scary, nobody's saying that he's the alleged killer. Everybody's saying he definitely did it because of his looks. So I just want to say, as a
because
society,
of his eyes in particular. Well, another problem for them is that the surviving housemate victim, that Dylan girl, she wasn't able to identify him.
Yeah, but like,
which is also a problem. I'm just saying,
it's definitely a problem. But when you're in a state of shock, your brain is not registering things normally.
I don't even. I'm not saying anything.
I just want to wrap up what I was saying. With societally, I find it interesting that we are so willing to defend an attractive person when it comes to a crime. But when somebody looks like Bryan Kohberger, he's 100% guilty because of his appearance. Even though there is truly, if you want to put the cases side by side, there is less evidence of his involvement in this crime versus Luigi and Brian Thompson.
Listen, Luigi is a nice looking specimen, I must admit, even though I think that he shouldn't have done that. But Kohberger there's like a whole entire group of chicks that thinks that dude's hot, which I don't see it. But like you're just saying that we think he's guilty because he's unattractive, but like people think he's attractive. It's just we don't, but like people think he's attractive.
But you just can't ignore the stark contrast between that case and the Luigi case and how people react. I mean, listen, really, you're not just guilty because you're creepy looking. Like that's it's unfortunate, but like you're not guilty because of it. That should be taken into
account. But one thing that needs to come out of this case for sure is this is going to be happening more and more and more. That the DNA situation is going to happen more and more and more. Like a lot of, for example. When I did one of those tests, it said to me, do you want to be put into a public database? And I said, no, I just wanted to have it done to find out if I had any underlying genetic things and also to do my genealogy and stuff, right? But so in what I gave consent for is to do a test to find out something for me. I'm not, like, technically I didn't give consent to try to see if my third cousin murdered somebody. You know what I mean? So
yeah, but I think there needs to, obviously, because this is newer technology, it needs to be more regulated. But I think when it comes down to crimes of this nature, like taking a human life, it shouldn't matter if you're accessing it through a public database or not, because you're talking about solving a murder. This person took somebody's life.
It's just a very, it's something, it's crazy because like in Congress, you don't even hear these people talking about this, and this isn't going to be for years and years and years that they're going to get this shit straightened out. I just think I don't think it's a violation of his rights, but I think it's almost a violation of the family members' rights who didn't agree to have.
But you consented to have it put in a public database.
No, that's not a public database. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
They said they accessed his DNA through a public database.
No, I don't believe so.
23andMe and Ancestry do not turn over the DNA. There are public systems. that are available to
All right,
anybody
you need
to
to
use
look
at
into
any
that
time.
because I was under the. So let's say, for example, right, 23andMe is not public. You send your DNA in, right? Let's say you do the spit cup.
It says right here, they compared the sample with data from public databases that came from the suspect's distant relatives. There are services that are public data. So if the police department subpoenas 23andMe or Ancestry.com, they push back on that really hard. I don't think they've ever given those over because it's private. But you could agree to have it put in a more public system like GEDmatch, and then that's putting your stuff in public to become public
So
information.
that happened with the Golden State Killer too, that it was a public?
It was through a public database.
Okay.
It was not through the private ones. And that needs to be like, that is for sure. 23andMe and Ancestry are very vocal about them pushing back on it because they want their users to know their data is safe. But when you agree to have it put in a public system, you are agreeing to make it public information, which that's why I'm not understanding how it's a violation of his rights if it's public data.
I don't understand that either because I was thinking, because I feel like there's certain ways that you can, I'm not a cop obviously, but there's ways that you could get around 23andMe not giving it. For example, like if you sent, and I know that you wouldn't be able to use this in a court of law. I'm thinking that if you send it in and just say you're whoever, it will like let's say you spit in a cup and you put that your name was whatever, it would match that you were my daughter, and then from there it doesn't matter who the person that sent it in, you know what I mean? Like you would find out, like let's say for example you had Bryan Kohberger's DNA and you sent it in to 23andMe just being like, hey, I'm a new user and I want to find out my family.
Well, they can't do that. That's illegal.
All right, so then what they did, they can do.
Because it's public data.
So then why is this even a conversation?
That's why I'm saying I don't understand her argument because it's a public database. If the police took his DNA and put it into 23andMe with a fake identity or used his name,
that's what I thought happened. Really, that they were using like. I don't understand.
This is what happened with the
problem.
Golden State Killer. They're taking the DNA sample they have. In the Golden State Killer case, it was semen from a rape kit. In Kohberger's case, it's the DNA they extracted from the sheath. So they're putting that DNA in and they're running it into a public database and it's pinging a distant relative of his. And then they look at the relative, they break down the family tree, they see circumstantially who's living where, what age are they, what do they look like, and then they narrow down the search.
They're not going to, I just don't think that they're going to throw this out then.
There's no way they're throwing it out.
What do you think, that they're just like throwing a bunch of shit out there and seeing what sticks, basically?
Yes,
defense?
because that's her
don't
job.
Look good on. Well,
that's her. Truly, what does she have to work with? Circumstantially, he was creeping on those women. He has DNA at the crime scene. Other people are coming forward saying he was an extreme creepster. I mean, unless she has, and what was the alibi they said he had, that he was driving around alone?
I don't think there's any. Yes, he was meditating, Maria. I don't think there's any evidence that he was creeping on those women. I know that they were saying that there was something with Instagram direct messages, but I don't know that
Well, I thought he had gone to the restaurant the one girl worked at a bunch of times.
To me, that's bullshit.
All right, well,
I go to Chick-fil-A up the street from me multiple times a month. Like, that doesn't mean that I killed the person that's there. That's ridiculous. He lived in the college town. It wouldn't be.
Yeah, but you're
and he was vegetarian or something like that.
Like with the last story too, you're being closed-minded. It's not about the one detail. It's about the little details put together in one picture. It doesn't look good for him.
Listen, I'm not. Wait, we have to talk about something else too. So apparently I don't know if you've listened to Nancy Grace about this, but apparently there's this guy that's on her show all the time that has a YouTube channel, and he's like a former homicide investigator or something. I don't know exactly what he does, but he was there reporting on this case, on the Idaho murders when it first happened. He was there within the first couple of days of it happening, and I believe that he was the one that pointed out the glove that he saw on the scene and was like, because remember Nancy like set up her table outside of the house?
Yeah, I do.
That was crazy. Which was outrageous, yeah. So there was police line. You weren't allowed over a certain part of the scene, and the guy was like a former homicide detective or something, and he yells over to one of the cops, and he's like, "Did you guys see this glove sitting over here?" So it was not initially collected, I believe. I don't know if that's the same glove that they found DNA on, which would be outrageous because now that could be anything because that was days later kind of. I don't know.
Okay, but there's two different things going on. The conversation we had about his DNA is separate from this new evidence that they're like, at first his lawyer tried to say they unconstitutionally got his DNA from the sheath. So that was the first thing thrown out months ago. The new development is that there was other DNA samples that had been known at the scene, and they did not disclose that when they got his search warrant.
Yeah. And they should have.
They should have disclosed it, but you don't know what investigation they've done on that. They could have found out it was from a party 3 weeks before. They could have found out the blood was from somebody that lived there 10 years before. Like, you just don't know. So it's this case is frustrating because we're getting little tidbits here and there, but there's a gag order, so we don't have everything.
It is frustrating too because let's say, for example, there was a glove that had blood on it. How could there not be any blood from any of the victims on it? It's just so interesting. The whole case is so interesting, and what is really scary about it, honestly, is that if he didn't leave, I mean, I still believe that he didn't leave that knife sheath underneath of that body, we would possibly never know who did this. And that is freaking really scary, actually.
Well, in some capacity, but that security officer at the college was onto his car pretty quickly. So
he was, but would they have done anything else if they didn't have, you know?
Well, they maybe couldn't have arrested him as quickly, but they weren't going to drop that.
Yeah.
They were looking into him pretty quickly, way quicker than we knew publicly before he got arrested, simply off of the car. The DNA thing was just like a good moment for them to tie it all together.
Okay. Medical news.
All right, so a new study has revealed a possible new use for Ozempic besides weight loss.
All right, so this is kind of really interesting, actually. So obviously we hear about Ozempic all the time. All the Hollywood people are using it to lose weight and such. And they're coming to find that there's more benefits to it because obviously it's curbing cravings for people for food, but they're also seeing that it's helping for other things too. So there was this really small study done with only 48 people, but they had half of the people on Ozempic and half of the people were not on Ozempic. All of these people had been diagnosed with moderate to severe alcohol use disorder. And for 9 weeks, they were in this study. So they had half of them taking the Ozempic and half of them were getting this placebo, they said. And at the end of the study, they had this party kind of thing that they said, here's a bunch of alcohol and you could drink as much as you want at this party to celebrate the end of this study or whatever. And they found that the people who were on the Ozempic drank less overall the 9 weeks. They also drank less at the end of the trial, the clinical trial party. And they also said that they smoked fewer cigarettes during that time as well.
Well, that's pretty cool if they could use it. I know that, I mean, I don't know if it's like approved for this purpose, but I know a lot of people are using Ozempic for fertility purposes. They're obviously using it for weight loss. The main cause of Ozempic was for diabetes. So to see it could be used for something like substance control issues, mainly with alcohol.
It's cool because I've been hearing studies too that are being done that it's for, obviously it's for binge eating, and now we're talking about alcohol use disorder, but also excessive gambling, excessive spending. The only thing, so it seems like whatever the mechanism is, it's suppressing that reward system that you would normally get from doing something like that. But the other problem is that it also suppresses your sexual drive. So that might be good for people that have these sex addictions or something like that. But for regular people, that might be a problem that you don't want to have certain things suppressed. So you hear like sometimes people are having symptoms of not having as much joy, and certain things are suppressed as well. So you have to take that into consideration.
No, totally. All right, so on last week's Valentine's Day special, we talked about different types of accidents stemming from pleasure, including 2 forms of urethral sounding. So in this case, this 23-year-old or 21-year-old shows up to the hospital and he has a USB cord in his penis because he was using that for pleasure.
So this guy had a history of doing this to himself. He said he used cotton swabs, wire cables in the past, but he was always able to get it out himself. And when Maria says it's a USB cord, you're thinking like, okay, this little 10-foot one that everybody has that comes with their iPhones or something.
And I'm thinking he just stuck the tip into his penis.
So he's got this, it almost looks like one that you would use for a TV. It's a thicker cable, more of a cable wire. I don't know in what circumstance you would use it. Maybe for a phone connection or something in your house, or a cable box connection or something like that. But this cable it doesn't say in the article how long it is, but to me I would estimate it's like 50 feet long. It's freaking huge.
So wait, when you're looking at the pictures of this first, he like kinks it in the middle and sticks that up his penis. And
then just starts jamming it up. So the two ends are like hanging out of his penis.
So visually, I'm like agreeing with you. This looks to be about a 5 to 10 foot long cord, but no, you're saying it's 50 feet. So you're only seeing the ends of it basically coming out, but he has stuck this entire cable up there, which is why he couldn't get it out.
Yeah, so it's obviously it's not just up his penis, but it's filling up his bladder with all of these wires, right? And the doctors first tried to pull it out and it was stuck, right? So they thought, oh God, there might be a kink, or they might have knotted up there. So they didn't want to mess with it too much more. So they put him under anesthesia and they went up there with a scope and they figured out that there was no kinks. It was just, you know what I'm saying? The difference between a USB cord wire versus one that you would, a thicker one that you would put behind a TV or something. Like it was thick and it was just not budging the way that they wanted to. So they were able to go up there with a scope and actually cut it. So they were able to pull it out easier. And he had to stay in the hospital for a week, which is long to have to stay in the hospital. He was discharged with antibiotics and his recovery was uneventful.
I can't believe people survive doing stuff like this. I can't. The scan of the cable, like all in his bladder and everything, is insane looking.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, this is the thing. Like, if we really think about this particular case, it's like we just talked about one last week. It happens all the time. And these are just ones that are getting reported in case reports. Like, think about all of the ones that are happening every single day in the emergency room that just never end up getting reported, you know?
No, definitely. All right, on to questions of the day. Every Friday at the @MotherKnowsDeath Instagram account, you guys could head over to our story and ask us whatever questions you want. First, have you ever done an autopsy and found endometriosis where you didn't expect to?
I've never found it at autopsy by accident. I guess I've seen it on women from time to time. That's just in the normal places, like over the outer surface of the uterus or down in the pelvis like that. That would be a normal place that you would see endometriosis. But I definitely have gotten a couple different ones that were weird in surgical pathology. So I had one that was from someone's belly button. And I have a case of that in my book, actually, that this woman was bleeding, like literally getting her period out of her belly button, which is crazy. And I also got one from the omentum. So that is the fat that it's kind of an apron of fat that covers all of the abdominal organs in the abdomen. So I've gotten cool ones in Surge Path for sure.
Yeah, because I guess in theory it could really go like anywhere, right?
Like that, the one time I got that belly button one, it has on gross exam, when you're looking at it and cutting it, it has a very specific look. We got it for a frozen section, and as soon as I cut it, I was like, this looks like endometriosis. It just looks like a very specific thing. And I remember telling the pathologist, and he was just kind of like, you know, we always have bets. I bet you it's going to be this or something. And I was like just satisfied that I was right about that, because it just does have a very specific look.
All right. How do you feel about body worlds?
I think it's cool. I think it's really cool. For people who don't get to do what I do and don't ever really get to see it, it's very similar looking stuff for the most part. I mean, it's wax. It's just really interesting. And I think that everyone has the right to be able to see inside of the human body. I know there's controversy around it, but I don't really get involved with that stuff. I just think the thing is cool. I've seen it a couple times. Did you go with me?
Yeah, well, I feel like I was Lillian's age. I was pretty young. It was at the Franklin Institute.
Yeah.
Remember?
You were pretty young because I feel like I was in school still, maybe when that happened,
Maybe
or
I was a little older.
maybe even younger. I'm not sure, but the one that came around Philly back in the day had a pregnant woman, and there was this whole room with like fetuses in jars, and I just think it's like I'm so for that stuff, museums that show that stuff, and um I don't know. I think that it's great for people to get to go see that kind of stuff.
Okay, last, what are both of your favorite Valentine's Day desserts? Wait, can I just start off with we were talking about how, the presents dwindle when you're
yeah.
married. So, I just got totally overshadowed because of the Eagles parade, right? So it was like all day just
I think that there's probably many women in Philadelphia that feel like, because a lot of times, right, you have a boyfriend and or a husband, and you're in a relationship, or a girlfriend, whatever, you're in a relationship for a long time, and you kind of look forward to that day because you're like, okay, this day he has to spend time with me, he has to take me out to dinner, he has to pay attention. And then all of a sudden you have to also go to the Eagles game, and then the guy's getting drunk all day, and then the whole night is shot. There's probably a lot of women that are feeling this way right now.
Yeah, so I went to the parade, and like all morning I'm just like not even like can I buy you a coffee, my dear? Like, right? It's just like all Eagles parade, which I will say my husband's very good husband in sense of like spoiling me and treating me special, but I was annoyed. And then after the parade, we go to Wegmans, and he's just like, "Why don't you stay in the car since it's cold out?" And then comes out with like macaroons, mousse, 2 things of flowers. I was like, "Okay, I just needed like a coffee and a like small $5 box of chocolates. I didn't need you to like buy me something crazy." But I sent you that funny picture of him outside the car door because I saw him walking up with the flowers. I was just like, he is an idiot.
I know. It's funny because that's and I sent you one back because I was in the kitchen in the morning, and Gabe had gotten up before me, and I'm in the kitchen just whatever cleaning up, and then I turn around and he comes in from the back door, and he's kneeling in the kitchen with like 2 dozen of roses he's holding in his hand, and I'm like, and my first reaction is, let me get my phone and take a picture of this because I don't think you've ever gotten on your knees for me. I was just laughing so hard, and then he had a hard time getting up because he's old. It's just, oh my God, we were cracking up. But I was like, that was so nice. But we have, I think I said this last time, that we have a tradition every year that we make Gabe like chocolate covered strawberries. So
Yeah.
we did that, and so that was cool. But I don't know, I didn't really have any special dessert for Valentine's Day.
Let me hold this picture up.
I made meatloaf.
It's like ridiculous. Oh, you made meatloaf? We had meatloaf too.
Really?
That's funny. Yeah. So, yeah, I like Valentine's Day desserts because a lot of it are raspberry themed, and I feel like not a lot of places. I think raspberry is definitely used in desserts, but not as often as it should. It's truly so delicious.
Yeah, it is.
So, I mean, the obvious.
I told you that we went to the pub the other night for dinner.
Yeah.
And they have that dessert that's called peach melba, and it's like
Yeah.
whatever peach melba is in an ice cream. And Gabe was just like, you got to figure out what this is. So he wants me to make it at home. And I looked it up, and it looks like it's some kind of raspberry sauce mixed with the peaches. So
that's probably
delicious.
so delicious.
Yeah, it really does.
I mean, my obvious favorite Valentine's Day dessert is the brownie batter donut from Dunkin', but I can't eat it, so I'll just buy it and eat the filling out of the middle.
So I forgot to tell you when you were here yesterday. Shit. I bought that brownie batter ice cream from, I don't know what the brand was, whatever. And there are chunks in it that taste good, but it's not, I don't know. I just thought it's just chocolate ice cream. It's like chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream. There's like balls of it in there.
But it's good.
It's good, but I wouldn't ever sit there and eat chocolate ice cream.
Well, I would, so
All right,
I'll
we'll
try.
take it. I know. I wanted you to take it yesterday because I was like, I just was thinking that maybe the whole texture of the ice cream would have been like gritty and delicious, but it's not.
After the kids made us those cinnamon rolls, which were really good, and then I don't know if you ended up seeing the coffee Lillian made me, but it was basically a heart attack. It was like you left. She poured the Starbucks iced coffee in the glass, and then she filled it to the top with like whole milk, and then she made me cold foam too and put more of it on top.
I
It
knew
was
she did because
basically
I was
white.
like, why was the little foam thing tampered with? Jeez.
It was basically the color of the coffee was basically it was a very light beige. So
It's probably delicious, actually.
it was delicious. Yeah, other than that, I agree with you. Like chocolate covered strawberries are delicious. I had a little chocolate mousse cup. I like all chocolates. I even like those really shitty box tart chocolates too.
Oh, yeah, like the one Pop gets us. My dad's
Yeah.
so cute. He came over on the weekend and brought all of us, like me and all the girls, these like what is it, like Whitman's?
Yeah.
He always does, like the ones from CBS, but they're so good.
No, they really are.
Of course, the little piece of paper that comes with it does not always match up. So you have to stick your nail in the bottom to see exactly like what's in each chocolate.
Now I'll
like
just
that.
bite all of them.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. If you have a story, please submit it to stories@motherknowsdeath.com or shoot us a message on Instagram.
See ya. Thank you for listening to Mother Knows Death. As a reminder, my training is as a pathologist assistant. I have a master's level education and specialize in anatomy and pathology education. I am not a doctor and I have not diagnosed or treated anyone, dead or alive, without the assistance of a licensed medical doctor. This show, my website, and social media accounts are designed to educate and inform people based on my experience working in pathology so they can make healthier decisions regarding their life and well-being. Always remember that science is changing every day and the opinions expressed in this episode are based on my knowledge of those subjects at the time of publication. If you are having a medical problem, have a medical question, or are having a medical emergency, please contact your physician or visit an urgent care center, emergency room, or hospital. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother Knows Death on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks.